They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that college promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control. They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that college promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight on Rogueways, we are joined by one of the best researchers who has consistently brought a stunning level of insight and elocution to her work, her presentations, her amazing writing, and her engagement with material that would have long since put many off the job, while she remains steadfast to the goal of discovering what exactly is happening in this mad world, who is pulling off the heists and societal control, and why they are doing it, as well as what we can do about it. Her work stretches back years and will lead us all into many more, and we are all the better off for it. The beautiful mind, the loving heart, and the fearless soul, Sofia Smallstorm, welcome back to Rogueways. It's always a deep honor to speak with you. How are you doing today?
Lindsay, I'm fine. I'm a little cold because Southern California nights have turned quite cold, but you'll laugh when I tell you what the temperature is. You'll tell me we're all babies.
I understand. I used to be a West Coast person myself, and it is now 15 degrees where I'm at today during the day with the sun out. So
yeah,
very different.
I told someone the other day, oh, my house is so cold. She said, what? I said, yeah, it's very cold. And she said, it's 19 here. She's in Idaho. But in Southern California, the houses are terrible. They have no insulation. And at night, it gets almost as cold inside as outside. And then it just won't heat up again because we have lousy heat.
Yeah, when they don't plan and they don't build things well, this is what happens. I feel for you. Well, I want to jump into what we're talking about today because I'm very excited about it, and lots of healing, and it fits with the recent themes. I've been really ill. My audience knows this. Recently, I'm recovering still, and I just did an episode actually talking about sort of heavy metal toxicity and heavy toxicity in general, and what we can do about it. And we talked a bit about alkaline. Eating alkaline, trying to eat maybe 80% alkaline diet. And it's interesting what we're going to talk about today connects with that pretty profoundly, but in ways that are really surprising and don't have anything to do with food or water. So I can't wait to do that. Before we get to it, I do want to shout out our friends at Content Safe, where podcasting and multi-platform video hosting is made easy. And so if you're in the biz, you're doing this yourself, you want to check them out for sure. Make sure your content is safe and available everywhere. And I also would like to invite you all to support what you love. If you love Rogueways, I love you back, and I would love your support in any way. All of you out there who are supporting by buying the Audible book, Sine Curve of Aeons, by buying the paper book versions that I can sell you from my shop. You can get them anywhere, but if you get them from me, you get a little inscription. They're on rogueways.org, along with the beautiful orgone I make. Perfect for Christmas presents if you're into that kind of thing. I also do services one-on-one. I have tarot readings, one-on-one sessions with channeled messages from your guides, and more. And you can also support via memberships on Rockfin, on Subscribestar, on rogue.locals.com. And you get exclusive content if you subscribe on Rockfin or if you subscribe on Apple Podcasts. So Middle Path every week is exclusive. I also do tarot readings once a month and sometimes more that is just for subscribers. So also, I teach courses on rogueways.thinkific.com. You can learn all sorts of things, spiritual, mostly how to protect yourself, heal yourself, and especially meditate. Well, a lot of people out there think they can't, and you can. You can do anything. So come learn how. All of these things and more you can find at rogueways.org. So thank you to all of you who already find ways to support. And the last thing, I'm just going to invite all of you to One Day of Brightness. It is this December 18th, I believe. It's on a Sunday. So maybe it's the 19th. I'm so sorry that I don't have the date in front of me. If you go to rogueways.org in the shop, you can grab a ticket to this event. It's an all-day event. This is the 9th time, I believe, that we're doing this event. It's a beautiful event. Uplifting, healing, really gets you in a space of love and compassion for yourself. You receive all kinds of healing and gifts. And then you also get to learn so much. We have Joshua Lewis this December solstice, and he is going to bring us mediumship. He does clairvoyant, clairaudient, and physical mediumship, and he's going to teach us how to do some of that ourselves. If you're into it, you don't have to. At the very least, you get to see it and learn about some really cool things. But if you want to, you get to do some of that yourself. And then we also have Marty Leeds coming this One Day of Brightness, and he is a Gnostic teacher and leader, as well as a math magician, and he'll be providing some new content and teachings for us. And he's just such an awesome person to get to be around as well. It's going to be a beautiful day. It is recorded. If you can't join us live, you can catch the recording afterwards. So feel free to join us either way. And I can't wait to see you all there. It's less than a month away, so get your tickets now. And finally, Sophia, back to you with the pointless question of the episode, which is, what is your go-to remedy when you start feeling ill?
Lindsay, there's a very noisy helicopter that doesn't want me to tell you anything.
I believe it. I can. That's crazy.
I'm going to close the door.
Wow. Yeah.
And yeah, it's going to circle now. This is what this thing does. It comes in circles often when I have a radio show.
Of course, right then.
That means I'm really important.
It does. I really relate.
It's incredible. I wish I could say it was a black helicopter, but it wasn't. It was silver.
Yeah, it's not always black, unlike the movies want us to believe. It is funny, you know, a lot of people think like that kind of thing can't possibly be. It can't possibly be that they would send a helicopter to hover over Sophia while she's recording, but they've done it to me, and I'm not as important as you. So if they'll do it to me, they'll do it to you.
So what? Okay, so Lindsay, cross my fingers, but I haven't been ill for rather a long time.
Thank God.
Thank God. And so I don't really have go-to ways of healing. I mean, honestly, I just tough it out. If you mean like cold flu, which now they all call COVID, right?
Yeah, right.
What happens if you have COVID? Well, you just have, I don't do chicken soup, but you rest and you have tea. Right. And you let your body get through it, because this is what I say. I mean, you may have had a very much more severe breakdown, let's call it.
Yeah.
But seasonally, Lindsay, and periodically, our bodies need to renew and rebuild cell types, tissue types, linings, cell layers. So when you have a very bad cold, which they all call COVID now, you will hack and cough and sneeze, and all this different mucus and phlegm will come up, and it'll be different colors. Now, those different colors are different types of cells. They're different tissue layers, right?
Yeah.
So your body is expelling old, dead, inviable tissue, and it's going to build new tissue. And that's why you have this very severe inflammatory response going on inside you, where you have aches and chills and fever. Your body is on the mend. It is telling you, you know what? I'm going to make you feel lousy. It's your own prostaglandins that give you the aches and pains and make you feel like a truck rode over you. And those are protein precursors. They are two typical ones when you have the flu are called interleukin 1 and 2. I just remember this from when I worked on a national health magazine years and years ago. But your body is putting layers of cells down. It's employing its battalion system of inflammation where there are ranks of cells that are launched to do certain things, to do destruction. Each battalion of cells eats up the last one. And in the end, you end up with new tissues feeling really strong and good. And so all the stuff you're expelling is dead material, and you are rebuilding. Now, why do we get sick? Why is flu and cold season in the fall? Well, because sunlight wanes, and that's what I talk about in this newsletter. Sunlight is waning. The air temperatures are colder. You're putting more energy into keeping your core, your pilot light lit, right? Your core temperature. And you're battling more environmental stress than you would in the summer when you've got the high angle sun directly beaming down on you for many, many hours a day. So this is why people have periodic colds and flus. And some people don't do a good job of repair because they might take over-the-counter assists like NyQuil or whatever, cough suppressants, and then they don't renew those tissues as strongly or thoroughly as they would if they just left themselves the natural course of things, right?
Right.
So,
you're actually suppressing,
yes,
what your body is trying to do, which your body's always trying to help you, always.
always. And if you drag it out and you make it incomplete because you take cough suppressants and you haven't coughed everything up, then you don't have those fresh, new, ultra strong layers restored inside you. And you'll have to redo this a few weeks later. Okay? So that's why people can get colds 2 or 3 times in a winter, because they aren't allowing full repair to go on and restoration. So anyway, if I do get sick, I just lie down and I give it its time. And one thing you could do, since I've learned this, I tell my body, good job.
Yes.
Keep going. Thank you. Even while you're feeling lousy, because you're feeling lousy because so much internal energy is being deployed remaking cells, and you don't have energy to spare.
Yeah. Yeah, which maybe you would if we lived our lives completely differently and weren't like constantly feeding ourselves more toxins and more toxins. And I know you and I aren't really big on that, but the general population is definitely big on feeding itself more and more toxins. And, unfairly, they've been duped into, and I was in this category at one point too, of feeling like these things are normal and they couldn't possibly be this bad for you. And but you're not only feeding yourself all these toxins, we're very rarely giving ourselves anything that is nutrient dense or organic and free of those toxins, or water that is purified. And in general, people aren't giving themselves those things too. So like you said, if you're already in that sort of a state, which most people probably are, and then you're getting sick and you're just covering over it and suppressing the body's processes with all these Sudafed and all of this stuff, then how are you going to get rid of all that junk? How are you going to rebuild things that need sort of reprocessing? And I love that, though. I also do the same thing when I'm very sick, when I'm in pain. I remember to often enough just say to my body, good job. I know you're doing everything you can for me. I know that this is actually healing me. I know that I'm clearing out what needs to be released. And I appreciate you, body. Good job. It's hard, though, because it does hurt and you don't feel that way. And honestly, I feel like we've been sort of conditioned to look at it the other way around. Our body's attacking us. Our body hates us. Our body's failing, right? And that's the way we tend to look at it. And it's so sad. That's where we've taken it. And this is one of the messages I love to share with people, is that it's exactly the opposite. Your body's doing the best for you. It always has been. It's on your side. It does nothing but love you and take care of you. And it's always doing the best that it can.
Lindsay, one of the things I quote from this wonderful book that my friend Randy wrote, Randy Lee. We're going to talk a lot about this book in this show. The book is titled The Mitochondrial Manifesto. It's rather what's the word, inscrutable title, because most people don't know what a manifesto is, and they don't know what mitochondria really are.
True.
But Randy worked very hard, many years, on understanding the material in this book, which he drew from many researchers. Bits of it are from me, I must say, but he doesn't give individuals credit in those sections where he has taken their material and integrated it into this wondrous book. He just does a credit list of sources in the preface or introduction. But he says that our bodies launch, and this isn't just us, it's all organisms, launch with a full bucket of life force. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then as you live, you're going to end up with slight mishaps, calamities. So this bucket of life force, nonetheless, generates really amazing emergency procedures, compensatory mechanisms, workarounds, and substitution. So you might have, a joint that is deteriorating, for instance, because your body is misaligned, it's askew. That's why people wear out a particular joint in their body, because they're not in proper alignment. Systemic arthritis is different. But anyway, alignment issues. So weight is transferred, load is transferred more into one joint than the other, and you'll wear that joint out. But while you're wearing it out, your body is learning how to transfer the load through the different musculature than it would normally use. And so these are workarounds. So muscles will take over for injured neighbor muscles that should be doing the primary job of that particular function, and it'll work for a while. But these, you won't even notice, but these suboptimal solutions will end up eventually in injury, right? And you'll say, what? How? And you're going to need some intervention at that point. You're going to need to realign, whether you can do it through massage or Rolfing, which I'm a big fan of, or some kind of, behavior, like posturally. People, their heads are bent now. And I see people who are very young with horrendously rounded shoulders and bent heads. And that's because they're doing their phone or a computer all day long, right? So when you have these compensatory mechanisms going, their body is learning to hold itself upright regardless. And for instance, the muscles in the neck become very taut and tight because they're doing extra support. And that's going to end up giving you all kinds of problems. People then have, their discs might go out or some such thing, because they've got all this strain. The spine isn't taking load properly. Sacrum will be affected, the lower back, lumbar muscles. I can't predict anything, but basically inflammation is the core of repair. So whether your problem is an injury or a cut or a bruise or infection or organ damage or chemical toxicity or radiation toxicity, or even just the cellular breakdown that occurs on an everyday basis, that inflammatory process goes to work. And it has this lineup of cells, of soldier cells. That's what I call them, battalions. So you start with oxidation. Your body, we were told for years, antioxidants, take antioxidants. And yet oxidants, the body makes oxidants. The body embraces oxidants that come into it because oxidants, they steal electrons from other molecules and break those molecules down. So I call oxidants the hammers. They are the claw hammers of the body because the body takes oxidation materials and hacks and smacks at molecules it wants to break down. And then when the breakdown job is complete, the body deploys antioxidants, which we get from food and which we manufacture to neutralize the oxidants. So it has its own, like this whole program, methodology that works, and you don't know a damn thing about it.
Yeah.
And even researchers, when they learned about antioxidants, they thought oxidants were bad, but they're not. They belong there, They're
Isn't
the
that
demo
funny?
crew.
We have to demonize anything that is destructive, even when destruction is actually in our best interest. There's, part of nature for a reason. We have the fall and the winter where things fall apart, they fall to the ground, they rot, but they go down and they add the nutrients to the soil so that in the spring, all those little seeds that have been hiding down there have exactly what they need in order to grow up again. And that's on a massive, slow scale. But of course, our body would have some sort of equivalent of breaking things down, of putting them where they need to be, of using what it can in order to create something new. That just makes sense. That's just efficient. But when you're talking about these parallel systems that we have, the way that our body will compensate and that it's suboptimal actually, but that we therefore won't notice something, it really made me think of my own condition with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's disease. This had actually been going on for years, for decades. And some doctors had sort of noticed various things, and I'd noticed a lot of these things, but I had never tied them all together because our body is so good at taking care of itself. One of the things that I learned when looking into hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's is that a lot of people have their thyroid removed. Thank God I have never done that and hopefully never will. But people who have had it removed will often have just a little tiny bit of their thyroid left that was sort of, some of the cells of the thyroid were sort of left in there. And they'll look in later and find that even those tiny bit of cells that are left, the tiniest bit of your thyroid is still trying to produce what it can to help your body do what it was supposed to do. But when the thyroid isn't there, there's other areas of your body that are producing those thyroid hormones. And so even your liver and your kidney and different areas will be producing these. And that's not what they're supposedly there for. That's not what they're supposed to do. But when they see that there is a need for it, they'll step in and they'll do it. It is then a drag on that system, a drag on the liver, a drag on the kidneys or wherever it is. And like you said, eventually that's going to cause problems too. But I find it amazing that the body has all of this built-in parallel systems in order to take care of itself, knowing that it's possible that some things at some point might fail and might need some help. It's just really beautiful.
Lindsay, I didn't even know anything about that the liver could make thyroid hormone. So I want to just do a recap on what thyroid hormone is. Collectively, it's called hormone singular, but there are 4 thyroid hormones, and they're annotated as T1, T2, T3, and T4. And I forget the names, the chemical names of each one, except T4, which is thyroxine. And that is really important for brain activity. And what I do find quite interesting, striking, is that the 1, 2, 3, and 4, which denote each type of thyroid hormone, that those numbers stand for the atoms of iodine in that hormone.
Wow.
So T1 is made with 1 iodine atom, T2 with 2, T3, T4. Thyroxine has 4 atoms of iodine.
Wow.
Now, you cannot make proper thyroid hormone without iodine. And I'm going to throw in a little plug for my store, because avatarproducts.com, which I hope you'll link, our best-selling products are iodine. We have 3 kinds. The cheapest nascent iodine available you can get from my store for $20 for 1 ounce. And I'm telling you, without iodine, you're going to be making your thyroid hormones out of iodine's dark cousins, which are in the periodic table. They line up right with iodine, and they are chlorine, fluorine, and bromine, which the powers that be have introduced into our lives ad infinitum. And that means that as you have brominated flour in bread. They call it a dough conditioning agent, which is nonsense. Yeah. Then you have fluoride in the food container linings. If you buy a can of anything, there's a lining in that can that's got fluoride in it. Chlorine is a ubiquitous household cleaning agent, right? It's even in our drinking water. Yeah. So your body is, I always say, it's a biochemical blind man. It never had to deal with intrusion by chlorine, fluorine, or bromine. Never. because this stuff just doesn't get into you in nature in the quantities that it's getting into you now. So because those cousins of iodine, the dark cousins of iodine, are molecularly so similar to iodine in their structure, their molecular weight, their negative electromagnetic charge, your body thinks they are iodine. So your poor thyroid is trying to manufacture its 4 hormones that are the thyroid is the master regulator gland of the body. And so its hormones are shipped out through the bloodstream and they hit loads of different organs and tissues, and they're very crucial to good health. So now your thyroid is sitting there chugging away, trying to make its key hormones out of chlorine, bromine, and fluorides. So you end up with chlorinated, brominated, and fluoridated thyroid hormones because iodine isn't there. So once you start taking a few drops of iodine every day, that gets into your system, it sits on your cell receptors, and it tells fluorine, chlorine, and bromine to shove off. So I did not know that the liver knows how to make thyroid hormone. That's extremely interesting to me, but it would be exactly the type of workaround that our body is equipped to do. But as you say, it's suboptimal, and then it starts draining those other systems, right?
Right. Yeah. The best thing we can do is keep our body working exactly as it wants to so that it doesn't have to pull from any of these other systems. I do take your magnesium iodine every single day, and it's actually really unfortunate because I just did an overview of this tonic that I drink every morning, and it's apple cider vinegar, and it's oregano oil, it's fresh lemon, it's aloe with Essiac herbs, and it's cayenne pepper, and I also add the thyroid, or sorry, the magnesium iodine at that time, but I forgot to include that when I was sharing that with people. So I wish I would have remembered. So they're hearing it now, right?
Yeah, and try the $20 bottle. The other bottle is almost twice the price because it has 1 orbital extra electron. So they call it more bioavailable. But seriously, the cheap $20 nascent iodine, which I think I'm the only person in the country that has that for sale, that is the building block of good health.
Would we're talking about electrons today, actually, which I'm really excited to sort of get to, because I had no idea they had anything to do with what's alkaline or not alkaline. It's just really fascinating to be reading about this in your newsletter. But would you suggest that more expensive iodine for me is, that extra electron worth it? Should I go for it? I'm not very concerned with $20 extra.
Well, you're getting magnesium iodine already, so that's the one.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah,
well,
that's
then,
the one that's twice the price of the other one, which doesn't have. See, what they do in that lab is they actually put the iodine through a flask, a glass flask, and they irradiate it with electricity, and their statement is that gives the iodine 1 extra electron to donate. But honestly, I'm going to tell you something. Light is the currency of life. This comes from Randy's book. And light is the alpha and omega of human biology. And a healthy body is good at capturing light, storing it, transforming it, using it, and reabsorbing it. So I'm going to read a line or two from his book.
Thank you.
In the animal kingdom, organs and organisms become dysfunctional because they're not good at retaining light. They literally lose too much light to the environment when they should be holding on to it and using it to do cellular work. The more light an organism can retain and use, the more complexity it can build and the more vitality it has. So a hallmark of good health is the efficiency with which your body is able to harvest light from the environment, convert it into different light frequencies like infrared, and store it for future use. That's the crux of health maintenance, optimal health maintenance. So you actually have photoreceptors in your skin, in your eyes, in your gut, in your lungs that sees light. And we're talking about sunlight, the thing they tell us to avoid because it's going to give us cancer, right?
Right.
And this seizure of environmental light gives all these it gives instructions to these light sensitive biochemicals, and we catalyze within us the process of hormone manufacturing, the creation of neurotransmitters, and those very elegant, very critical materials control your metabolism and cellular regeneration. So your cells store light energy, okay? And therefore, light is the currency of life. Now, what were we talking about just a few minutes ago? When sunlight wanes, you start to get sick. You feel worse. So your body says, all right, if I'm going to not have the sunlight I need, I'm going to remake my cells and tissues because I need them to be as strong as possible right now. Okay? So the illness and even obesity, Randy says, are the unhappy consequences of a loss of light due to weak electric and magnetic fields within the mitochondria, which are these they're foreign parts of you in the center of each cell. There are mitochondria. They're called the engines of the cell. And they're derived from ancient bacteria. They're not even human. That's what's shocking.
So this was the part that I stopped in my tracks and reread a few times because I was just so, the idea of mitochondria as foreigners. And we're taught, if we remember anything, we're taught that mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell, and mitochondria are these things that we can trace back and, actually understand our lineage through. And they seem like almost like the core of us, aside from maybe DNA would be like the other sort of most essential physical aspect of us, is the mitochondria. And then here we are presented this idea that they're actually foreigners, that they're outside of us, that they're not even human. This is so mind-blowing for me.
I was trying to unmute. Okay. Lindsay, we are like any complex corporation. Think of Exxon and Chevron. The more complex and higher energy demands that an organism has. I mean, we do lots of things. We're much bigger than an ant, and we operate in a much more complex way. So our bodies integrated mitochondria into us and bacteria, because you'll find it also interesting that we don't digest our food. When you want a plate of mac and cheese and you can't think of anything else, it's not you that wants that. It's your gut biome that wants that. It's the bacteria in your gut. So I've rethought this idea of spoiled children who just eat pizza and hot dogs.
Yeah.
Right? It's because they have such a narrow gut biome. Their internal biological environment in their body, in their digestive system, is composed of a number of bacterial types, and they like mac and cheese and hot dogs and pizza. Yeah. So that's why these kids get sick when they eat spinach, and they hate spinach because they don't have the bacterial spectrum to digest vegetables, right? So that has to be built back into them. So what's very interesting, this is a little sidebar from the newsletter, is that sidebar away from the newsletter, there is a communication, and I call it an ancient electrical language, which I talk about in this newsletter, called redox balance. There's redox communication between the bacteria in your gut and the mitochondria in your cells throughout the body. So the bacteria in your gut make these carbon metabolites, which are their form of energy, that are needed to control health in your different tissues. So there were studies done at UC San Diego and UCLA some years ago that showed that if you didn't have X type of bacteria in your gut, you tended to develop breast cancer. If you didn't have Y type of bacteria in your gut, you developed some other disease. Okay, so it was clear that the type of bacteria occupying your gut was directly related to the prevention of certain types of disease. And that's because those bacteria are the direct cousins of the mitochondria, and they talk to each other.
Wow.
So the bacteria in your gut, you're supposed to have 30 to 40,000 different varieties. And most people are running on less than 10,000, fewer than 10,000 varieties of gut bacteria. Okay. And
I
when
imagine that if we all had 30 to 40,000, maybe we wouldn't be able to suffer from mass hypnosis like we have recently.
that's
Who
possible
knows?
too. Yeah. Who knows? But so the narrower your gut biome, the worse off your disease prevention is going to be, because those bacteria just can't speak the language to enough of your cell and tissue types to generate health. And this is all done electrically and, of course, with light, as Randy explains later. But so I have another product in my store. I'm heavily pitching my store. It's called Ion. It used to be called Restore. And let me just give you another little sidebar to explain this. When you take probiotics, because that has been the standard for improving your gut biome, right?
Right.
First of all, I learned that they come from cows' intestines.
Oh,
So they're not optimal for humans. And second of all, they give you maybe 8 varieties, 16 varieties if you're lucky in any probiotic pill or capsule, but they give you endless copies of just a few varieties. So you're in need of thousands of varieties and you're getting 8 or 16. So that's not, they often make a little improvement, but they don't catapult you to a much higher degree of this redox communication. So this product, Ion, the guy who invented it with his research team is Dr. Zach Bush, and I've listened to a lot of his material. I'm friends with people on the staff there, and I've learned a lot from their emails and their research, and I use their product every day because what they did was they went to, okay, so our soil does not have good bacterial spectrum in it because we use all these chemicals and we eroded our soil. That's why there isn't enough iodine in the soil. People used to be adequately they had adequate iodine nutrition because it was in the stuff that grew out of the soil. But now with farming methods, our soil is stripped of minerals and it doesn't have iodine in it anymore. So Zach Bush and his research team theorized that modern soil does not have the bacterial spectrum. We have monobiome in the soil and monobiome in our gut because what we eat doesn't furnish us with enough bacterial spectrum. So they went to the southwest desert of America, where once you did have fertile soil, but it's all dried now. And they worked out how to take the earth from the desert and reactivate those carbon metabolites that the bacteria that lived in that soil at one time made, because the bacteria are gone because that soil, that desert earth is all crumbly and dry. But the bacteria's energy products, which are these carbon metabolites, they call them, they're carbons with different facets, they remain in the desert soil. So Bush and his guys were able to take earth from the desert and reactivate the carbon metabolites. So what you're getting in that product Ion is the electrical communication from ancient earth, ancient soil. And it goes into your body. You take it before meals. I just take it every single day, and I have for several years. And your health starts to improve because now, even though you don't have the bacteria living in you, you have the residue of ancient bacteria in these carbon metabolites coming into you, and they talk that electrical language to the mitochondria in your cells.
Wow. And so does it help restore the, 30 to 40,000 different bacteria that we need by introducing that electrical communication from that residue?
No. I'm slow to answer because my mute button doesn't work that well today. But no, because the bacteria are gone. But it's almost like it's those suitcases that the bacteria left behind that are put back in there. It's their luggage, which they needed for energy manufacturing themselves, because these are inorganic molecules. So the inorganic essential stuff is still in the earth of the desert. And if that is put into your body in an active form, as they have figured out how to do, and they spent tons of money on R&D, a huge amount of money. So they have this patented process by which they have reactivated. And you know what, Lindsay? It works. I'm going to tell you something. I had a broken eardrum for years, and I think it came from using the cordless phone too much. Not the cell phone, but remember when we had cordless phones, you could walk all over your house? Yeah. So
That's
I
so
used my
nice.
cordless phone. I know. And then after a while, I noticed it felt like a moth was fluttering in my ear, and it
Yeah.
wouldn't stop. Okay. Have you had that?
Oh, I actually went to the doctor and told them I think I have a moth in my ear, and I think they almost wrote me a psych eval instead of helping me. But yes.
Okay, so I concluded that there was something going on with my tympanic membrane, my eardrum, because there were too many, I didn't know this at the time, but I figured it out later, electromagnetic frequencies, radio waves that were bashing at my eardrum. Okay, so I had an injured eardrum. So
Yeah.
I just learned to live with this, but that fluttering would keep me up at night. I would have a hard time falling asleep. Sometimes it was very noticeable, other times it wasn't. But anyway, I started to take this product, Ion. It used to be called Restore. And oh my God, within, I would say, less than 2 months, that fluttering stopped.
Wow.
And there were a lot of other little things I noticed that improved. And all I could say was, well, it's from taking this Ion product. Because
Yeah.
now the metabolites, the missing stuff that was communicating with the cells of my ear is back. All right.
Yeah. Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
It's really fascinating. My ear issue actually started when I was really, really young. Anyone who had the Nintendo Entertainment System may remember the gun that came with it so you could play Duck Hunt. And my brother took that gun and put it in my ear and pulled the trigger, and nobody would have thought that would do anything, right? Because there's no sound, there's no air that comes out, there's just nothing, right? Well, we didn't understand electromagnetic fields, and that actually when you pulled that trigger, something was coming out of the gun. But I knew at that moment something had happened, and I cried, and it hurt and things, and I never had hearing the same. And that's the same ear that later developed that flutter. And so it's interesting to connect it back to that electromagnetic frequencies again, just like those cordless phones you're talking about, or, pretty much everything we're talking about today is this electromagnetic communication that happens. When you use it incorrectly, it damages you.
Yeah. Or if you overuse it, like putting a cell phone to your ear or having it on your body. I catch people with the cell phone in their chest pocket, or women putting it in their bra.
Yeah.
So anyway, we absolutely have, Randy has a phrase for this. We have lived somewhat recklessly and sloppily, and we have injured ourselves. And many times that's without our knowledge, of course, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
most of the time.
yeah. So what's another interesting, one of his tenets in his book is that disease is caused by the leakage of light. You are leaking light. And wherever your mitochondria are weakest, you will be leaking light because of the presence of low electric and magnetic fields. All right. So now what's interesting is obese people are fat because they leak light.
Isn't
But if
that
you tried to
amazing?
tell one of them that they wouldn't believe you.
No. If you told anyone they were leaking light, they'd be like, okay, woo-woo, spiritual weirdo.
Yeah. So I was fascinated by this photoelectric effect, which occurs when light shines on something. That substance will give off electrons. And we have photoreceptors, as I said, in our body that capture this light. This is called light information. And the reason it's called information, Randy explains, is because it generates cues and signals to our biological system and tells it to generate critical chemical compounds. It even tells us what season or time of day it is. And, I notice, Lindsay, when I wake up in the morning, there's one window that I don't don't draw the shade on, and my eyes always go to that window, and I look at the light, and I keep looking, and I keep looking, and I keep checking as I'm waking up. And that's because the light of the morning, the ultraviolet spectrum is, ticking away right then. It's giving my body biological cues to wake up and get going.
Yeah.
And then as the sun is higher and you get the yellow light of noon, other biological processes are turned down. Your wake up process is shut down, and your, let's just call it zoom mode or something, is going. And then as infrared kicks in later in the day, you start to close down the zoom mode of the middle of the day, and you start to get into evening mode. So it's very important to know what time of day it is.
Yeah.
And that's part of light information.
It's very simple when you put it that way too, that light is information, that your body receives this information, that it can understand this information. And of course, we were created by nature in nature. Why wouldn't we have this communication system? Why wouldn't we be using light in this way? And if our body can take it in and it can use it and it can be, do what it needs to do with it, then good. If our body can't take it in, or if it can't use it correctly, or if it can't hold on to it and it's leaking it out, then all of these things become problems for us. And at the very base of it, it's an information problem, right? It's an energy problem and an information problem. The light cannot be used correctly. It's kind of fascinating.
It is. I'm going to read another paragraph from his book, which is, you can get it at my store. It's called the Mitochondrial Manifesto. And right now, I believe I have a lower price than Amazon. So there you go. Yeah, Amazon knew how many copies of this book I was selling, because nobody else was besides me and Amazon, because I know Randy personally. And they lowered their price to what was basically my wholesale price.
Oh,
that's how much they lowered it.
You controlled the market. You're powerful.
I know. So anyway, he says, everything that happens inside us on a biochemical level is preceded by an electromagnetic input and our biological programming. So our signaling molecules, metabolism, brain function, sleep, and anti-aging efforts, they're all subordinate to light, water, magnetism, and electromagnetic frequencies, both good and bad. So biochemicals are virtual passengers along for the ride, whereas photoelectricity is the real driver, meaning electrons, protons, and photons. Okay, so I write, all Joe Public needs to know is that it's not proteins, carbohydrates, and fats that keep us going, it's electrons.
Yeah. Well, and you pointed out as well, and again, this was the part that really hit me, only because I've been kind of focused on alkalinity and keeping an alkaline environment. Your body wants this alkaline environment. But when you're writing about this, I start to understand why your body wants an alkaline. Why does alkaline matter? Acidic sounds bad, but, acidic isn't actually bad. Like we talked about before, some things need to be destructive. Sometimes things need to be destroyed. And both alkaline and acids can destroy depending on what it is they're in contact with. But we want this alkaline diet, and this alkaline, it's actually all electric. It's all of this that you're talking about. And you pointed out acidic things equals having more protons, and alkaline equals having more electrons. Is that right?
Yes. So acid is low pH charge, and those materials accept electrons. Alkali is high pH charge, and those materials are electron donors. So alkaline diet will introduce into your body materials that have electrons to share, to give off. And we like alkaline foods now because we are in an imbalance. We are electron poor. So when you're electron rich in your body, you're doing well, because electrons are the energy of life. All right. And this mitophysics that Randy writes about, is the physics of the mitochondria. And if your mitochondria are running in poor form, what they do, one of the things they do is they create the ATP molecule, which is a molecule that is constantly rebuilt. it's turned over, it's recycled in your body, and your cells take, it's like the fuel, the gasoline of the cell. So your cells take ATP, they take the electrons out of it. ATP then is reduced to adenosine. It's called triphosphate in its full form, and then it becomes diphosphate, adenosine diphosphate, adenosine monophosphate. So your mitochondria have to pull at more electrons and build them into ATP. So if your mitochondria are running poorly, that will bring you right to the door of illness, breakdown, and eventually death. So these things that we're told, diet and exercise, improve your diet, go out and exercise, they help a little, but Randy says that they are almost cosmetic in their importance, okay?
Wow. That's really a paradigm shift for most of us, right? Like we're just, I think a lot of people getting to the point where they care about their nutrition and they care about their diet enough and they're trying to exercise more. And then we're actually bringing this to the next step. There's something even more crucial.
Yeah. Well, you know, even if you eat right, a lot of families do, you're still going to see people who are fat. And this is even in the third world where there supposedly isn't enough food. You're going to see people with fatigue, diabetes, kids who can't pay attention, infertile couples, and it just goes on and on and on. And why is that? Why are we not getting better collectively? We're actually getting worse. And this is how he explains it. And this is my wording in my newsletter. The reason is an unfriendly environment that pelts us with destructive non-native frequencies, the wrong kind of water, unnatural cloud cover, artificial blue light, and separation from the free electrons flowing from the soil and water of the earth.
That's a good list, actually, of the things that you kind of need to look at in order to create health for yourself, isn't it?
Yes.
You have to find a way to get back in connection with the earth, find a way to balance the frequencies around you. Yeah, what a good description. The water is so important.
Yeah, and he talks about structured water. So in the cytoplasm of your cell, which is, if you picture an egg, the nucleus is the yolk, and an egg is the biggest cell that exists. It's one cell, if you can believe that. And the cytoplasm is the egg white. So the cytoplasm of the cell in your body has to be negatively charged. So the more progressive way of talking about ATP and the mitochondria is that the real purpose of ATP is to keep that cytoplasm negatively charged. That means the presence of electrons, lots of electrons, keeping that negative charge going. So what they've taught us in our world is that if you're sick, your body is not defective. It's what's around you that's defective. They've taught us our body is defective.
Yeah.
And so we look at our blood results, blood tests, radiology images. We're looking for proof that our body is betraying us, but it isn't. It's because what's around our body, Randy says, what's happening to us is really the downstream consequence of light, water, and electromagnetism acting on your mitochondria and circadian rhythms. So he says, look around you for the source of your health problems, not inside, because it's your environment that's defective. It's your inputs that are defective.
Wow. Yeah. If you could control the light, the water, and the electromagnetic environment, then you could definitely be keeping yourself in a state of health. Your body wants to stay in a state of health. That's what its goal is. That's what it's always trying to do. And it can't do it if it's in this constant state of attack, you might say, from the environment you've got it in, sometimes against your will or without your knowledge. But I wanted to also, mention oh, shoot. I just had this thought about, well, I guess I'll just say, a lot of us have these smart meters and we're, maybe there's these huge, electric lines running, beyond our house. And we don't always think about how that could be tearing us apart as well, or what we could do about it. But I do want to also talk about structured water, as water being one of those components that he's talking about and that we're talking about that can keep you in this state of alkalinity or of having an electron-rich environment, or keeping your mitochondria in an electric state. Oh, I remember what it was. One of the things that we don't notice that's in our environment that is doing so much damage on this level is seed oils. I'm on this big kick where I'm just really understanding how damaging they are. Seed oils break down your ability to process sunlight correctly. It damages your ability of your skin cells to take in light in the right way. And imagine then, given what we're talking about, just how destructive that is to your whole entire body, every cell in your body and your whole system.
That is possible, Lindsay. Yes. But the thing is this, we have so many onslaughts that we have to keep those onslaughts in a kind of balance.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you're sitting indoors and working indoors, as most of us do, and you don't, I say to myself, I have to look out the window constantly at the blue sky because it's an input that's running my biology. I can't just look at the computer screen all the time. And I go outside. To make phone calls. I sit on my deck in the bright sun to make phone calls and I make phone calls on a wired phone. I don't use cordless or cell phone or anything like that. But what's interesting to me, a lot of his book is based on the work of Jack Kruse, Dr. Jack Kruse, who was a neurosurgeon by training. And he found that he was also some kind of star football player in college and all this good stuff. And then he goes to work in a hospital as it was either, his internship or residency. And when he began to spend long hours in these artificially lit hospitals and these operating rooms, his body mass he went up to over 300 pounds.
Wow.
Okay. And Kruse theorizes that obesity begins in the eye.
Wow.
Now that's kind of a crazy notion, right?
Right.
So he says that our body, when it's hit with sunlight, creates a laser that changes sunlight into coherent light that activates all these programs in our subcutaneous fat. So the skin it coats your body for a reason. It's the biggest organ, and it's an organ chock full of photoreceptors. And this sunlight has to penetrate into your body. And even glass that's in your office or car or house window blocks 40 to 60% of this all-important light frequency.
Wow.
So the sun's infrared light reaches your cells, and then it starts to repair damage or eliminate dying cells. And this process of cell death, apoptosis, and then cell turnover is what boosts your immune system. So, it's hard for us to understand. And honestly, Lindsay, if we lived natural lives, we wouldn't need to understand all this.
Right. If we just spent time in nature, if we just ate sort of what was growing around us in season, there's so many things. If our water wasn't poisoned.
And here's a very interesting quote from Kruse. If I held a dead rat in one hand and a live rat in the other, I would tell you that each of the rats contained exactly the same biochemicals. What's the difference between the two rats? The difference is the amount of energy that each rat has. The dead one has no energy and the live one has energy. So if our biochemistry really mattered so much, why is one rat alive and the other dead?
Mm-hmm.
And so what is that energy source for the planet? It's the sun. So the entire energy that supply to our earth comes from the sun. And they want us to avoid it.
Yeah. Like the plague. I mean, you have to cover up, you have to put on sunblock, you have to do all of these things to protect yourself. It's like, why not just live underground and become mole people? And the thing is, again, the seed oils, when you cut them out of your diet, apparently there's a lot of people, and me included, have experienced this where I didn't used to burn out in the sun, and now I go out in the sun in 5 minutes, I'm like roasting. I can tell my skin is dying from this, and I feel like the sun has changed, but I don't know that the sun has changed. I think it's these seed oils. And when you cut them out of your diet, you no longer have that experience of just frying in the sun, and you can be in the sun for longer.
So explain the seed oils, so we just don't get this term seed oil over and over again. What are seed oils?
I'm not the total expert on it, but most of the oils we've been told are heart healthy and better for us are things like safflower flower oil and canola oil, and these are all seed oils. So as opposed to animal fats or even dairy fats like butter, or other things, avocado oils are not seed oils, even though they're vegetable oils. Coconut oil is not a seed oil, even though it's vegetable oil. So those things are not included in this. Those are good oils.
And olive oil?
Olive oil is, if you can find real olive oil, it is also not a seed oil and is good for you. It's okay for you.
Yeah, and a lot of olive oil I've learned is cut with canola oil. And that's
Canola
why,
and safflower.
yeah, that's why the olive oil you buy in America is so pale. When I lived in North Africa and France, my God, the olive oil was so different. It was thick and like yellow green.
And like green. Yeah.
Yeah, and it smelled so different when it was cooking.
So I wouldn't even do olive oil because I don't think we can trust it. But do maybe avocado or coconut, or if you're an animal product eater, do butters and animal lards for your oils. But so all those other oils that are mass produced industrial seed oils, they have what is called linoleic acid, and they have very, very high amounts of linoleic acid. And our body was meant to process, and I'm not going to get the numbers right, but let's just say it's something like, 2% of our diet or something is possibly got linoleic acid. Well, because we've developed this oversaturation of seed oils, these cheap seed oils, and we've used them in everything. You can go to the store and look at all these products and they're going to have seed oils in them. Now we're at 40% or something, and it's just overload. Our body can't deal with all of this. It's a toxin, right? It's a toxin at this point, especially when it's in such high quantities. Even at the trace amounts, it's a toxin. Even at the trace amounts, it's doing some damage, but it's just one of those things your body could handle if it was a normal amount. Like if you're just eating some sunflower seeds here and there, or you're, coming across them sort of naturally. But in these quantities, they're not, and they're damaging. So it actually, and I don't remember the exact mechanisms. I read a Mercola article where he breaks down exactly why this happens, but the linoleic acid, it goes and it harms your mitochondria and your mitochondria's ability to do what it's doing. So it's exactly going back to everything we're talking about here today. And it makes sense, therefore, why it somehow has something to do, again, with how your body can receive the sunlight and use it correctly or not. So when people cut seed oils out, they find that they don't need sunblock anymore. and it just makes me wonder how much of this was sort of planned and intentional, again, to keep us out of the sun, fearful of the sun, feeling like the sun is a damaging agent. And, it is if you're toxic and poisoned, and it seems not to be if you're not.
That's very interesting. I know that there's a lot of rancidity in these oils, that they oxidize really fast, and that's why it's not good to cook with them. But and coconut oil is much more stable, as is avocado oil. So anyway, if you can find the real olive oil, I would say get it. But if your olive oil is not green in color, dark yellow and yellow green, it's probably cut. So anyway, I wanted to continue with this notion of biophysics.
And the weight.
What I didn't understand until I started to learn about Zach Bush and his research, that the body, we think of it as closed up and dark inside. It's this big soggy bag that has stuff in it. It has organs and veins and tissues and bones, but it's actually using light. Your body is taking sunlight and breaking it down into different frequencies and distributing it throughout its interior, and those light frequencies are starters for all these different biochemical processes. So when you are not able to use light properly, I think the translation is that you leak it. You can't store it, you can't manage it, and it just seeps out of you. So our bodies actually turn sunlight into mass, which is our cells and tissues. They make new cells and tissues out of sunlight. That's what I find really interesting.
Wow.
And this book, Mitochondrial Manifesto, is a very easy book to read. I mean, it sounds like it's full of really hard science stuff, but he has such a friendly writing style, and he has worked so hard to break it down really simply. I mean, you can open this book anywhere and just read it and read a section and go, wow, all right, well, what do I do about that? And that's the question, Lindsay. It's like, what can we do? What can we do? We read this book and then we look around us and we go, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. What am I going to do about all this? Because my modern life is dependent on these devices, right? And this timetable and this interior. I mean, I can't go and do my whatever you're doing on the computer, or if you happen to have a job in an office, where you go, you can't tell them, can you put my computer outside?
Right.
So we first have to have the awareness of how our lives have changed. And I will say this, that I put this in my newsletter because it was so interesting. So here's Dr. Jack Kruse, 357 pounds. And he decides to exercise and eat less. Now he goes up to 387 pounds.
I relate. People don't believe me, the things that I'll do and still gain weight, but it happens.
So when he went to Italy, he's standing looking at Michelangelo's statue, David, right? And he's looking at David's physique. And David is from 1400s, okay, the 1460s. And actually it was the early 1500s, 1501, that Michelangelo got a hold of the marble. It went through some other people's hands first, and they didn't do the job or finish the job. So anyway, David carved in 1501. His physique looks a lot better than Jack Kruse's. And Jack Kruse is thinking, so what was different about the 1500s than my world? And he decides, simple conclusion, the 1500s must have been better suited to human biology.
Yeah.
So what has changed since the 1500s? Light, frequencies, and energy.
Yeah.
A lot more man-made radiation in the form of wireless, and electricity introduced into our homes. That's another big culprit, and we don't give it enough significance.
Agreed. Yeah.
And now we have LEDs. LEDs make your body think it's night.
And the green revolution is in love with LEDs. So I'm sure we'll see many, many more of them.
Yeah.
So he seems to have found the key to lose weight, though, right? Does he share that? Or
he has? You have to be a subscriber to his website to learn his protocols, or I don't know if he's written books or what, but he did he did try the paleo diet. He tried all kinds of stuff. Paleo diet set him back 42 pounds, meaning he gained 42 pounds.
wow.
But when he designed his own protocols, it took a year and he shed 157 pounds. That's quite a bit of weight. All right.
That's amazing.
Then he had his son and his nephew and his wife and his daughter. Apparently weight runs in their family. So they all tried his protocols and boom, the weight just tumbled off. So this metabolic shift that his protocols created it proved that this is a two-way street. You change the biophysics of your existence, you'll lose weight. You switch the biophysics back to the bad sources that were giving you the wrong inputs, and you'll gain weight. So
it's so opposite of what we've been told, just like everything else we've been talking about today. We've been talking about how they've been telling us our body is failing, or it hates us, or it's just it's broken, it doesn't know what to do. And with this as well, that you're supposed to eat certain things, exercise in a certain way, and that's going to make you lose weight. And if it doesn't, again, your body's broken, there's something wrong with you, when really there's so much more complexity to it, and so much of it is this sort of electromagnetic or electric state of our body and the mitochondria, whether or not it's happy.
Yeah, and one thing, simple thing to do is in your bedroom when you go to sleep. First of all, I really am an advocate of tilting your bed. Did I ever mention that on one of our shows?
I think you did. Your head would be slightly elevated and your feet would be
Yeah.
slightly, yeah.
You tilt your bed, you put books or something under the head end of your bed so that you're lying on a slope. Technically, it's a 5-degree slope, and you would raise the head end of your bed 5 to 7 inches. And that lying on that slope creates a mass of different improvements. It'll improve your circulation. It will improve your digestion. Stroke victims report better movement. The website for that to learn and see some videos and some maybe interviews, it was put up by a British engineer, Andrew Fletcher, I think his name is, and it's called inclinedbedtherapy.com. So that's almost a freebie to tilt your bed, but then to start unplugging stuff in your room, like unplug electrical devices. Don't sleep with your cell phone as your alarm clock. I have cell phone shielding cases on my website. If you must sleep with the phone next to you for the alarm, you just put the shielded side of the case, facing you. So there are different things you can do, but generally don't sleep with a router in your bedroom.
No.
I don't think people should have a router in their house at all. And now they're making these routers such that you cannot turn them off. They have to Wi-Fi has to be disabled by the provider at their headquarters.
What? I have not heard this. It's so dystopian.
Yep. A lot of Wi-Fi routers now, they used to have an on and off switch and they don't.
That's crazy. I'm lucky ours still has one, but I'm with you. My ideal would be to have a setup where we could have all of our, things that are online just in one room, and that room is shielded and it's all wired, and the rest of the house is free.
Yeah.
And that's what I was even envisioning when we were talking about having to work, having like a sunroom where you have a standing desk, and that's in the sunroom, and you can still pull the shades if you need to, but otherwise you get some sun while you're doing this drudgery.
Yeah. But Lindsay, there are people who live in apartments that they don't face the sun at all.
Yeah.
The sun is the south side, not the north side, and so forth. You were mentioning a special room. You could just curtail your activities, even like not use your cell phone at night, and not do computer at night, turn it off. And I should have said this because I just learned recently that you can actually buy your own router that has an on and off switch if you research them. And so then you could use that instead of the one that your provider brings over with their technicians,
Yes. I'm actually really lucky. Our bedroom, we don't have anything in it. It's just the bed and our books. Yeah. That's it.
That's excellent.
But the rest of the house, not so much. And we just both, I do the show, and, there's so many things going on that we have to have internet for. And, but my ideal is to get someday, to this point, and one thing I want to touch on too, that we mentioned it, but we didn't go into it, is this water and the structured water, and that this is actually, I don't know if you get into this in your newsletter, I can't remember, but this is almost like a fourth phase of water that we're talking about. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah.
E-zone water. Gerald Pollack, Pollock, is the guy who really brought this out. And Randy writes, I'll just read from his book. Nature designed sunlight to give you equal parts of blue and red, because red light is nature's antidote to the stimulating effects of blue. So blue stimulates, as I said, in the morning, you look out the window at the blue sky. And red infrared light forms that E-zone water, that fourth phase of water, which holds, when the water is in that fourth phase, crystalline water, as they call it, it holds electrical charge, and it gives you more healing capacity. So red light also spins this ATPase, which is an enzyme that releases electrons from ATP. It makes that spin faster. This is very technical. I don't really understand it. So you make more ATP. And then infrared light warms you as heat, which enhances blood flow and oxygenation. So red
Yeah.
light by itself is almost a substitute for food because it will help. What's happening now is because we're not grounded, and if you look at biochemistry research, they will tell you that your ATP comes from the byproducts of breakdown of fats and carbohydrates. They don't even know that it comes from light. It comes from having your feet on the earth. That's called free electron transfer. So they only talk about donated electrons. And I actually had a conversation with a famous biophysicist, Dr. Chevalier, because I figured this out myself. I was looking at the whole Krebs cycle, which is the term for the reconstruction of ATP. Now, what's very interesting is you create your body weight in ATP every day. If you weigh 100 pounds, you're making 100 pounds of ATP. That's how much you use. If you didn't have ATP being generated, you would die in a few seconds.
That's crazy. That's
Yes.
how
So
amazing.
ATP that's why they call it the gasoline of the cells and the body. But anyway, okay, what was I saying? I just lost my train of thought.
The Krebs cycle.
The Krebs cycle. So yeah, I was looking at this going, wait a minute, breakdown of fats and carbohydrates, they don't know about walking on the earth and getting the free electrons. So the breakdown of fats and carbohydrates and the antioxidant presence is all called donated electrons. Now, why do you think, Lindsay, I figured this out all by myself, why is everybody stuffing their mouths with fats and carbohydrates like there's no tomorrow? Because they don't have their bare feet on the ground. They're not getting free electron transfer. They're getting donated electrons from the breakdown of fats and carbohydrates. That's why they're eating so much of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I really love hearing this actually, because there's so many people out there who feel so disempowered and they feel like I can't stop and I don't know why and I just want this so much and like I'm trying so hard. And it's like, yeah, maybe you can cut yourself a little slack when you understand what you're missing and what your body's actually asking you for, and that this was the only way you knew to get it.
Right. You've got to spend time outside. You've got to. And one reason why people really benefit from swimming, even though it's a chlorinated pool, a lot of pools are using a different mix now. They use soda ash and a little chlorine, a little of this, a little of that. There are also saltwater pools. But pools and hot tubs, if they're in ground, they draw electrons from the ground because they are made of concrete. The basin is concrete and there's a steel frame. So when you're in the pool, you are absorbing millions and millions and millions of electrons from that water. Your shower, why do you feel so great when you take a shower? Because the electrons are coming in water that's in a copper pipe in the ground. And you're getting this bath of electrons. And your body takes those electrons and stores them and does repairs with them. So this is the importance of free electrons, as opposed to the donated electrons. You don't just want to have electrons from donation from what you eat. You want free electrons. And here's something. Why do you have less of an appetite, less of a sweet tooth, less of a junk food craving in the summer? Because you're getting so much more free electron transfer from your little activities. Gardening. Why do people love gardening? Because their fingers are plunged in moist soil. So that's a source of free electrons. So the more you introduce free electrons into your life, go sit on even concrete. Concrete will give you free electrons because all that silica in the concrete is conductive. Dirt paths, when people walk to school in their, leather-soled shoes with their moist feet inside the leather, and they walked on dirt paths, they were getting electrons. And the dirt schoolhouse floor, they were getting electrons. They were skinnier then. They didn't come home and eat Doritos and Oreos.
Oh, it makes so much sense, why all of these things we can try so hard and work so hard and still nothing changes, or we can just change our electron, situation, give ourselves more access to this, right? And our body will just do what it needs and will just shed what it doesn't need, and get back to a place of balance where it wants to be. Your body wants to be there too, just like you want it to be there. So that's a really beautiful thing. I don't know how much more time you have, but I really wanted to also talk to you about lasers.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I just explored and have experienced laser therapy. So we were talking about how your body takes sunlight and it coheres it. Coherence is what the laser does. The laser is a coherent light beam. And I was lucky enough to be given a tip this summer by a neighbor, and I went to West Coast Laser Therapy. I had a number of different cricks and issues. I had a shoulder that had a lot of impingement in it, that I had a torn bicep for a couple of years, and this wasn't healing well. My right arm got really emaciated. It looked horrible. I lost my whole right bicep, basically. It looked like a skinny little rope. It almost made me cry. So I went to this place where they have a really expensive, super duper $150,000 laser. And that's the Phoenix Theralace. And there aren't a lot of them in the country, but I was lucky enough to have some treatments from this machine. So laser is an acronym that stands for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Okay, it's actually light oscillation, not light amplification, but they use the term amplification because the acronym that results from light oscillation by stimulated emission of radiation is loser.
Nobody wanted that.
Right. I think that's funny.
It is funny.
Yeah. So lasers are frequencies that are higher on the electromagnetic spectrum than microwaves. And laser frequencies include infrared. So it's a light beam, and we need light. We are adapted to light on the electromagnetic spectrum because we use it to navigate. We couldn't see without visible light. So our bodies know how to safely integrate and use visible light. And so lasers are infrared light, and the ones that are used for therapy are called cold lasers. The ones that are used for surgery are hot lasers because they cut and burn tissue. So there's a very good website that I learned a lot from, coldlasers.org. And that website has a number of lasers for sale for home use and professional use. So the big laser that I got treated on was only available for many years. It was the manufacturing company is in Dallas, Phoenix Theralace, and they sold it to the ball teams, NFL and NBA, because those teams, $150,000 was not a lot of expense for them, and their players were able to get back on the field in a week rather than a month or 2 months or 3 months after they were injured. So the woman who started West Coast Laser Therapy was a sales rep for Phoenix Theralace, sold this machine to lots of different NFL teams. And she saw the results, saw the results. And she just decided, I've got to get this out to the public. So she bought a machine, opened up here in Solana Beach, California, and they've never had to advertise. They are open from like 6 a.m. to 9 or 10 at night. And you can go in, you can get same day treatment. You can buy 10 packs for a reduced rate. You can develop an injury. This has happened to me. Something tweaked, same day, I go online, I book an appointment, I drive over there, and I get a 15-minute session.
Wow.
So what does this do, this laser therapy? It's known as LLLT, low-level laser therapy. And it induces photochemical reactions by way of giving your cells photonic energy, which stimulates ATP production. So we have just gone through how important sunlight is, and particularly the infrared spectrum. In fact, Randy says in his book that if you're sitting indoors, just buy a cheap infrared heat lamp, turn it on, and beam yourself with it while you're working. And you will feel heat, and you will get the benefit of infrared hitting your skin, and you'll boost your health maintenance a little more, right?
Yeah.
So this light energy is extremely important to injury and tissue healing. They market lasers as being for pain management only because they don't want to make any claims about them.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of different theories as to how many nanometers these lasers pulse. And I've actually used a small laser, a couple of small lasers for home use on my own body, along with that Phoenix Theralase. I've had that experience. But the little lasers are very effective. They're very effective on shallow areas of the body. The Phoenix Theralase, the big one, penetrates 7 inches into the body. So it's really good for giant, dense people with like large areas of the body, the thigh, the butt. If you're a basketball player and you have a giant set of deltoids and you have a deltoid injury, that machine is going to be really good. But that machine is 1275 nanometers. And that's the frequency of the wavelength. And the most other machines in the industry are 810 nanometers, and some in the 600 part of the spectrum, and some in the 900. So some of these machines have options. You can set them for 810 or 9605 or 9, whatever it is. But research has given us the statement, many different studies, that 810 nanometers is most beneficial for human tissue healing. So, these, you can buy your own laser. Go to coldlasers.org and just have a look at them.
That's amazing. I feel like, some people who are kind of off in the woo are looking at, that aliens are bringing in med beds and they're healing people. And I'm always like, oh my God, what are we talking about now? But things like this, I'm like, well, this is a med bed. What you're describing would be the equivalent of what we think we're talking about when we talk about alien technology and having these med beds. It's just having these lasers that just tell your cells like, hey, here's some extra energy, use it how you need, repair yourself, do what you got to do. Just simply, just easily, just putting that in there in the system, just right away, in a way that your body's naturally attuned to and already looking for.
I will just add this because I'm not a genius, but I can think a little bit creatively, and I do have the ability to hold information in my brain and then go, oh, I know what to do with that information. So I learned from Zach Bush, who is the person who generated this product, Ion, which I really recommend people get. And you can get that at my website, avatarproducts.com. We talked about that with the communication that goes on between your gut biome and your mitochondria in your cells. So anyway, this guy, Zach Bush, taught me from just an interview that I heard that the cells communicate with each other through gap junctions, which are fiber optic cables that connect them. So the cells who are damaged or injured go, guys, I'm damaged, I'm injured. And these cells that are ailing, they actually don't have the capacity to, maybe their DNA is starting to get damaged, but they can't remember healing instructions. So they need information from other cells. So those cells nearby that hear them through the gap junctions say, oh, you lost these instructions? Well, here they are. And they issue exosomic particles. Now, we heard from Andrew Kaufman what exosomes are, that they resemble viruses. So yeah, virus is a messenger from a healthy cell to an ailing cell, exosomes. And these are all transferred between cells when a call for help is given. And guess what the telegraph system is? Infrared light.
Of course.
So the ailing cell uses infrared light to call out through the gap junctions to the healthy cells, and it says, I have forgotten how to do blah, blah, blah. Can you please tell me? And instructions are sent by way of an exosome to the ailing cell, which takes it in and reads the directions and says, okay, I'll make this now. So what if your body isn't processing sunlight adequately? You don't have enough infrared light. you get a little bit of laser therapy, and this infrared is supplied to you, and now your telegraph system is in better order. You can communicate from one cell to another. That's my theory.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. And, again, as within, so without, as above, so below, here we are doing the exact same thing. How many people listening, are the cells going, you guys, I'm damaged, I need help. And here we are having this conversation. I'm one of them, honestly. And you're giving us this information that we need. And now we're better able to, oh yeah, this is what I need. And here is how I'm going to heal myself. And so I'm so glad that you have that mind that can grab all of this information, go searching, compile it, synthesize it, bring it together. Your newsletters are such a pleasure because of that. You just have such a beautiful way of bringing together so many different seeming ideas, but actually they're all pointing us back the same direction in the end. And it always has an eye towards helping. And so I really appreciate that. And you, Sophia, thank you for bringing this to us all today. Thank you for being the messenger.
Lindsay, thank you. And I just tried to make sense of it in my own head to satisfy my own understanding. And you should see me trying to write a newsletter. I say to myself, time has gone by. I better get that newsletter started. It's going to be late. I am a little bit late, but people aren't yelling at me for it. So I'll start going, okay, what do I want to write about? Okay, it'll be this. And then I say, how will I fill the pages? And it's so strange, but I just stumble into material. I will pick up a book that's been sitting in my house forever, and I start reading it and I go, oh, I can use this book, part of this, part of that. And it's all cobbled together, but it just seems to read like I planned it all out, I don't know. It's kind of remarkable. And I'm relying on my luck in this way. And yeah, that's the other thing. So my store is avatarproducts.com, and you can find the iodine there. There are a lot of really good magnesium products. There are eye-friendly LED bulbs, full spectrum light from these LED bulbs, very energy efficient, but they're made by an electrical engineering company that I'm associated with, and they're my friends and they're wonderful people. So yeah, try the light bulbs, especially if you're in the northern latitudes and we've got winter coming. Try the ion, try the iodine, and my newsletter you can subscribe to, which you can find the subscription method on sofiasmallstorm.com, which is my blog. So yes, thank you, Lindsay. I really like being interviewed by you because you're so brilliant yourself.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I don't feel that way right now. When you were talking about, that the brain relies on this, T4, I was like, well, no wonder my brain hasn't been up to snuff for quite some time. But I really appreciate that. I'm getting there more and more all the time. And I'm getting there because of people like you and the research you do and the things that you bring, because we all need this help to start healing again. And I love your shop. I love Avatar products. I actually send it to people that I work with. I send them there as well for various things. I use that magnesium cream every single day to get more magnesium in my body. And I actually impressed my chiropractor when she was saying something about magnesium. And I said, oh, I use it topically because it's best absorbed that way. And she was like, how did you know that? And I was like, Sofia Smallstorm.
Oh my God. Yeah, I have a wonderful biochemist in Colorado who makes this magnesium cream, and it's very, very absorbent. It's very rich. It's a bit greasy, guys and women, so you might not like it for that reason. I always wear old clothes when I put the magnesium cream on, but if you put a bunch of it on before you go to bed, you sleep really well. And we have gel, which isn't quite as greasy. It's a little slippery, but we also have the magnesium spray. And I recommend the gel and the spray mostly for men because it just itches women and they don't like it. But if it itches you, you can just stand it for a few minutes and then wash it off, and you will have absorbed some of it, at least enough to offset pain or whatnot. But yeah, for control of pain, magnesium relaxes tissues and enlarges them, so it speeds healing. And we have a lot of the magnesium calcium ratio is very specific in the body, and we have a bit too much calcium going. We also have a lot of cell disrepair and cell death. And when tissues become really like necrotic, when they give out in the body, your body will throw a bunch of calcium at them. So this is why you get arthritis and calcified tissues like stenosis in the back and whatnot.
Yeah. And I just know I'm magnesium deficient, and this is one of the ways I aim to fix that. And I use your iodine supplement, and you have so many good products. The cell phone shielding bags are highly recommended. If I didn't already have mine, I would have gotten them from you. There's just a lot there, and there's so much more that I want. It's on my wish list. So,
well, you guys have to look at the new stuff that I have in there, which is, I never thought I would get into this, but these art prints. I'm not going to say anything else, but they're now on the front page of my store, Lindsay. And
ooh.
I am so stunned by what happened this summer when I was able to create these prints by way of, let's just call it some technology. But I framed 2 of them. They're in my house. They're just shockingly amazing.
Wow. Can you tell us more? Or
no, next show.
Next show. All right. Well, we'll keep
Just
that on the
look
list.
now. Just look now. I'm telling you, in real life, these things are extraordinary.
Wow.
And they would be amazing Christmas presents. Amazing Christmas presents. Unique.
This is the thing I'm always trying to get people to do. And hopefully all the listeners out there are already on board with it. But, excuse me, buy people things that they'll use, buy people things they need, buy things that will improve their lives, buy things that will support small businesses like Sofia. And, all of this, I think, makes a huge difference, but it also is actually loving, and it's not just consumeristic and, sort of empty. And so I love shopping in places like your store for gifts and things like that. But yeah, I can't wait to have you back. I'm sure we can make that happen, hopefully in early January or sometime around then, whatever we can work out together. So I can't wait for the next newsletter. And is there anything else you want to share with people that you have coming up? Or
I mean, I just mailed a newsletter out that I'm very excited about because it came together. Like I said, I'm always, I'm like the whirling dervish with my hair all disheveled and papers everywhere. And I go, this is going to be awful. I don't know how to do this. And then it happens and I read it. I usually read it in bed before I go to sleep, and I put on my critic's hat and I read it and I go, that wasn't quite so bad.
That was actually pretty
okay.
good.
I can send that out. I'm all right with that. And then I send it out. So, okay, well, thank you. I love Rogue Ways, and I would love to post this on my blog and podcast page. So sofiasmallstorm.com is my blog. That site, the larger site, is pretty static except for that blog page. And then it links to the store, avatarproducts.com. So thank you, Lindsay, for all your support and your kind words about everything.
Well, thank you, Sofia, and fellow travelers of the path. It is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom, according to the infinitely wise Sofia Smallstorm. Sofia, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Well, there is only one thing amongst the sea of things in existence, and that one thing is light. It can express as sound, as heat, or as visual cue. It can slow down to extraordinary rates and present as material reality, even. It carries all the information that has ever existed or could ever exist. It is the word spoken and brought to be. Let there be light everywhere and always. And when we can bear it, let us be light as well. And until we are, let us travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
You ever been so wrapped up in your own thoughts it feels like you're drowning? Like you start thinking you're fucking insane, because the whole world is insane. And you're starting to wonder if the insanity of the world is sanity, and you're just stuck with insanity. It happens. Let's get insanity. Soon it'll have me drowning. Party near the wake, leave me where you found me. Soaking up sound waves at their crest. Ride a rhythm is what I seem to do best. Leaving what's what for the dimension which I form. No one no true definition to cold or warm. Up or down, right or wrong. I'm only feeling alive when creating order songs. I'll cut up a canvas, anvils dropping on the mattress. Anyone sleep and survey their address. Wake up, it ain't the first of the month, just don't slumber. Two splintered lumber uttered in one word. Pull back on the cerebral to see we're all people. I know what's inside of me, I don't need to hear it from a steeple. Check dots, call me MC Eric Lindros. Spit toss of the thinker since the first pin drop. Open up my chest before I'm bleeding, starving on his heart. Used to wear it on my sleeve until it was straight ripped apart. Trust is so deeper that it's worth to share. Try and repair this tear before I don't care. Open up my chest before I'm bleeding, starving on his heart. Used to wear it on my sleeve until it was straight ripped apart. Trust is so deeper that it's worth to share. Try and repair this tear before I don't Watch care. Watch me break a mirror, love it, fragmented reflection. Put it together in and out of order section. I guess it's in the eye of the beholder. Carrying a chip so big I can't see past my shoulder. The older I become, I make wisdom like a drum. Only to find society decided it's too easy to be dumb. What have I become, a monster or a prophet? Shall I sleep in a palace or inside of a coffin? I guess when I rest, family knows what's best. My pack of Euro months chop down our family tree with our crest. Hopefully it's not so dull after the task. I'm drowning in insanity when I only used to fast.
Every living thing follows along a set path. And if you could see your path or channel, then you could see into the future, right? Like, that was a form of time travel. Well, you're contradicting yourself, Donnie. If we were able to see our destinies manifest themselves visually, we would be given a choice to betray our chosen destinies. And the mere fact that this choice exists would make all preformed destiny come to an end. Not if you travel within God's channel. I'm not going to be able to continue this conversation. Why? I could lose my job.
bounce on a nimbus with an S of a gymnast. Stretch lung fitness, Mobius strip witness. Swim upstream through the fibers of infinity in the vicinity of infallible divinity. Outstretched arms, but flesh ain't allowed to taste it. No, so close as the moon bases above the light of dawn. Howling at the Luna, gnawing at the wire into my organic computer. On the draw, it's the raw fallen star shooter. Rip the fabric of time, string theory suture. Past becomes the future, subconscious in the forefront. Lost the programming, obnoxious to the Lord's grunts. Tiptoe on obelisks, soaking nature's novelist. To the soul it's obvious, the optical ain't dominant. Matter seeming prominent to Gaia's drowsy occupants. Check the emerald documents, the depth of this is bottomless. Depth of this is bottomless. Bottomless. Depth of this is bottomless.